It's always been funny to me how teenagers have this angsty ambition to run away from home. There's something youthful about craving independence and feeling like you could take on the whole world if your mom would just stop texting you freaking every 5 minutes, you know? I remember the time my sister ran away from home in June. It was a hot and muggy night a few years back. I was taking a nap in my room at the time when I heard some yelling and shuffling around downstairs. I came out to see what was going on, and I saw my sister standing there and crying, holding a suitcase full of clothes. The next 4 words that she said left me with endless nights of lost sleep and a few more years of dropping out of therapy. As she made her way outside and into a stranger's car, my parents and I stood in the driveway in disbelief. You see, my sister was dating another girl at the time, and she didn't feel like anybody could actually understand what she was going through. She hadn't always dated girls, but there was something about this particular relationship that offered her a kind of love and acceptance that she hadn't been able to find anywhere else. Now, I'm in no hurry to discuss any of the moral or theological implications of this subject, and frankly, I'd feel like a fool for trying to. But I do know that I built up an insurmountable amount of hate towards my sister at this time. I'd be ashamed to tell you some of the words that I use in order to make her feel less about herself. So fast forward to transferring to Biola University, the spring semester of 2012, just awaiting in anticipation for all the glorious things God had in store for me, but I didn't anticipate my first real friend that I would make on campus. Although I didn't go to much of the transfer meetings, sorry, Dr. Corey, I ended up attending one required safety meeting in Mayor's Auditorium. And so naturally, my introverted self made sure I was in safe isolation from anyone who could come over and ask me the cliches like, where are you from? What are you studying? How do you feel about predestination? The campus usual, you know? But this one kid had the nerve to come over and talk to me and start up a little conversation. We ended up talking for a while, and he later introduced his parents to my parents, and over the course of the next few months, we began to become closer friends. So there was a lot of late night conversations in the dorm room. It turns out he was living in the same dorm room as I was and in the same floor. We ate way too many Cheez-Its and gave a few of them to a parrot that we smuggled into his dorm room. Sorry, President Corey. But after that, he started opening up a little bit about his life, a little bit more about his family, and a little bit more about his sexual orientation. And as I sat there listening to story after story of horrific conversations he'd had with pastors and peers and endless sessions of reparative therapy, I began to realize that this might have been one of the only times that he got to talk without somebody telling him how to change. I realized how important something like this might have been for my sister. Because for so long, I sat in a place of judgment and hate, pointing out all of her imperfections instead of pointing her to Jesus, talking and talking and talking, instead of just sitting in silence, listening to her, empathizing with her, hearing her story, and sharing in her hurt. I gave my sister a call on the phone that night. I don't really remember a ton of what was said, to be honest, because most of it was through tears. But I had to tell her that I was sorry. I had to tell her that I was in the wrong. And I had to tell her that hating her for 5 whole years was the only sin that we would be talking about that night. And the next 4 words she said, they felt something like an anchor lifting from the depths of my soul. I forgive you, Tommy. I gave her a call a couple weeks ago, actually, to see if she'd be okay if I shared some of the things that we went through in our relationship. She was ecstatic, actually, and proceeded to tell me all the new things that she was learning about Jesus and all the new ways she was learning to accept his love. And it's crazy, really, when you think about it, because something occurred in those moments that brought more clarity for me that I probably could have received from some debate or collision of opinions on sexuality or any other point of contention for that matter. In my attempt to imitate the character of Christ, to really figure out and try to see how that plays out in real life. I learned to sit back, to remain quiet as long as necessary, in order to listen to the stories of each and every person God had appointed me to love and to care for. I always thought that admitting I was wrong would be the biggest display of weakness for me. But I can't even begin to tell you the amount of strength and freedom it brought to those relationships. Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this message. Biola University offers a variety of biblically centered degree programs, ranging from business to ministry to the arts and sciences. Learn more at biola.edu.